Hey there and welcome! If you're revising Restoration England for your GCSE History exam, you have come to exactly the right place. This is your rapid-fire revision guide, and we're going to break down everything you need to know straight from the AQA specification for this really fascinating period.
Right. This is the big question, isn't it? We're talking 25 years of plots, plague, fire, and some serious political drama, all squashed down for one exam paper. It can feel like a lot, but look, don't sweat it. The key is to break it all down into the core themes that the examiners actually care about, and that's exactly what we're about to do.
First things first, let's get our bearings. Restoration England is your British depth study. You're going to find this on Paper 2, Section B. Now that means you've got to go deeper than just knowing the facts. You need to really understand the connections and the complexities inside this short but incredibly jam-packed period of history.
So what are we actually talking about here? Well, in 1660, after all those years of civil war and Oliver Cromwell's republic, the monarchy comes back with King Charles II. This 25-year chunk of time is basically the story of a country trying to put itself back together. It's all about figuring out that balance of power between the king and his people, all while facing these huge crises and, at the same time, this massive cultural shift.
Okay, so let's dive into the first key area from the specification. This is all about the struggle for control. This is really the political heart of the Restoration. And you know what? It's all defined by one central conflict.
And that conflict is, you guessed it, the Crown versus Parliament. I mean, they just fought a whole civil war over this, so the shadow of that war hangs over absolutely everything. The two big friction points you need to know are money and religion. Parliament held the purse strings, and Charles always wanted more money. At the same time, there was this deep, deep suspicion about his Catholic sympathies, which just explodes during the crisis over who would succeed him, his openly Catholic brother James. This is so intense it even leads to the beginning of political parties, the Whigs and the Tories, arguing over this exact issue, until finally in 1681 Charles just sends Parliament home.
And look, these fears about Catholicism, they weren't just whispers in Parliament. They led to actual panic and real threats. You have the Popish Plot in 1678, which was a completely made-up conspiracy that whipped up this massive anti-Catholic frenzy. That directly led to the Exclusion Crisis, where Parliament tried to block James from ever becoming king. And when that failed, some radical Protestants came up with the Rye House Plot to literally assassinate both Charles and James. You can see how it just spirals. Fear, plot, crisis, repeat.
And right at the center of this whole whirlwind was Charles II's court. It was glamorous, it was witty, it was pretty scandalous, a total world away from Cromwell's Puritan England. But it wasn't just about the parties. The court was the engine of power. Who you knew, who liked you, your patronage, that's what made or broke your career. Charles's own personality, his charm, and his political cleverness, that's how he played the game and managed to stay on top through all the chaos.
All right, let's switch gears and look at the social side of things. What was life actually like for most people? Well, during this time, it was shaped by two massive and kind of contradictory things. Just unprecedented disaster and an absolute explosion of new ideas and culture.
Now this is where things get really dramatic. London gets hit by this unbelievable double whammy. First, in 1665, the Great Plague, which killed something like 100,000 people in London alone. Then, just 1 year later, the Great Fire of London rips through the city and destroys most of it. For your exam, you don't just need to know what happened, you need to know how people at the time explained it, blaming God or the stars, and how the authorities tried, and often really struggled, to deal with it all.
But here's the crazy thing. Out of all that death and destruction comes this incredible wave of creativity and new thinking. Theaters had been shut down by the Puritans, but now they burst back open with these witty, often quite rude comedies. Coffeehouses pop up everywhere and become these hubs for debating politics and business. Charles II himself was a huge fan of science and founded the Royal Society. And you've got people like Samuel Pepys writing it all down in his diary, while architects like Christopher Wren get this incredible opportunity to rebuild London from the ashes.
So while all this drama is happening back home, plague, fire, political plots, England is also looking outwards. It's aggressively expanding its power and its influence across the entire globe. This part of the course is all about England's growing empire.
The absolute crucial point to get here is that land, trade, and war were all tangled up together. The big idea was mercantilism. Basically, England wanted to control all colonial trade to make itself rich. They passed laws called the Navigation Acts to enforce this, which, of course, put them on a collision course with their biggest rival, the Dutch, and led to a bunch of wars at sea. This expansion was driven by powerful companies like the East India Company and, tragically, fueled by the horrific expansion of the transatlantic slave trade.
Okay, now for a part of the exam that often trips people up, the historic environment question. Every year, the exam board picks a specific site from the period, and you have to answer a really detailed question on it. So let's break it down and make it not so scary.
And yeah, this is exactly why you need to pay attention. This single question on one specific building is worth 16 marks. That is a huge chunk of your grade, and it actually works out to be 10% of your entire GCSE history qualification. You absolutely cannot afford to just skip over it.
The trick here is to have a system. Don't just describe what the building looks like. You've got to analyze it using these 4 steps. First, what was it for? What was its function? Then, look at its design. How does the style reflect the ideas of the restoration, like science or power? Next, who was involved? Who designed it? Who lived there? And then the most important part. How does this one building connect to all the big historical events we've been talking about? You have to link the specific site to the big ideas of the period. Okay, let's pull all of this together. Knowing the content is half the battle, right? The other half is knowing the game. It's understanding exactly how the examiners are going to test you on this stuff. So this is your strategy for Paper 2, Section B.
Think of this table as your game plan. You're going to face 4 types of questions. The first one asks you to analyze a historical interpretation. The next 2 are all about your knowledge and how well you can explain things. So, explaining the importance of something or writing a story of how an event happened. And then there's the big one, worth a massive 16 marks, that historic environment essay, where you have to link the site to the wider period. If you practice these specific question types, you are going to be ready for anything they throw at you.
Because really, that's the ultimate challenge of this whole topic. It's not just about memorizing names and dates. It's about seeing the threads that connect everything. How a secret plot in London could shake the monarchy, how a new scientific discovery could change society, and how the design of just one building can tell you a whole story about the hopes, the fears, and the ambitions of an entire nation. Keep that in mind, and you'll do great. Good luck with your revision.